James in the Bible, in the New Testament, chapter 1, verse 2, says to consider it all joy, my brethren, when you can encounter various trials. Uh, Consider it all joy when you encounter various trials. He goes on to say, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. That's what he says. That's hard to do. Consider trials joy. Most of us, we really want to avoid trials. We don't want to have to go through trials and difficulties and hardships. How can they be a happy thing? Our natural instinct is to run from these things and just avoid these things and find an easier way. It's not the kind of thing you would tend to say, consider it joy. I guess when you think about it, when you see someone, myself at least, when I see someone running down the street, there's a lot of people that like running, and you see them running and they're out there going, and I see the look on their face, the strain on their face, they're breathing sometimes heavily, and they're running along the road, and they're out doing this, and I often just ask the question, why are you doing this? But they like it. I don't know. It's one of those things I would never do. I only run when I'm in danger. There's not a lot of things that I want to run for. It's just not me, I guess. But so others they like watching their food and having diets. And there's people that spend all kinds of time on different types of diets and lifestyles around food. I don't have as much of a concern about diets. I should, but I don't. But it's one of those things. Once again, you see people struggling through these things, and they can't eat this, and they can't eat that, and they have to endure through all these various things. And diets don't seem joyful to me. They seem hard. I guess it's the same thing kids do with school. You think about with school, all the years of our life growing up through elementary school, junior high, and high school. Here in our culture, at least, most kids kind of have this sense of, I can't wait to get out of school. Can't wait to be done this, and every day their parents kind of have to drag them off to school, and they're happy to get home at the end of the day. They don't really like going to the school. All these things are kind of trials of our life. They're not huge, but they're things that we have to do, that we have to kind of endure and go through. And there's different times we do these things, and it can be tempting to look at them as just simply something to cause us to be sad, not happy. It's just kind of what it looks like. But the fact is, people often choose trials. Not only do they get thrust upon us, but often in our lives, we'll find ourselves choosing trial, like the runner who likes to run, or the person who, after going through all the years of grade school, decides, I'm going to go to university and I'm going to actually pursue higher education for years to come and at a great expense. So we actually sometimes pursue trials. Trials are not evil. Trials are not bad. Trials have a very, very good thing that they do for us. According to James, we as Christians, we should look at the various types of trials that we end up having to face, whether they're things that we go into knowingly or surprise us, that we should look at these trials as joyful because we know that they produce endurance in us. That because of going through hardship in life, and there's all kinds of hardship, but because of going through hardships in life, it actually produces endurance in us. There's a result that comes from this. Now, it would be tempting to say, well, wouldn't it be better not to have to need endurance? Why should I have to want endurance? I'd rather not have to have endurance and just not have the trials at all. Okay, except that endurance isn't actually the end result. That's just part of the process. James says that it produces endurance, and if we realize and we let it, endurance actually, it has a perfect result. It causes something. And so building endurance in our life through trials produces in us, as he said in James 1, chapter 1, verse 2, he says it produces in us something perfect and makes us perfect and complete. It does something to perfect us and complete us. Endurance provides something to our Christian walk that makes it so that we lack nothing. So we have everything we need. Something powerful about it, something important about it. When we think about running, I guess the person who's doing the running is gaining health. He has to learn the endurance that goes with the long run, but he's gaining health. The person who goes on the diet and has to learn to endure the meals that he wants to eat more, he's producing health. And And you think about the schooling that we go through, and we have to endure through many days of study, and if you go to higher education, the cost and all that goes with that. But it's producing some sort of knowledge, some sort of skill, some sort of something that we're going to use in life. It's going to bring us something. It's going to give us something. The endurance we learn in the process itself is process, and it teaches us, and it builds us, and it produces something in us that perfects us and makes us better. And when we really understand that, and we see that, then we understand, well, you know what, the trial is actually a good thing. It's actually a really good thing. Now that's just in regular earthly thinking, but when we realize this from a Christian perspective, we go even a step further than that. We then realize God has a way to use trials for a divinely empowered building of the character of one of his people. When we understand that God is at work in the trial comes, and through that trial, God himself is at work in you in some way, producing in you a divine endurance, and through that endurance, producing in you divine qualities, godly qualities that change us in some way, that help build us and make us like him, and provide in us a spiritual resource that makes us more and more like him. Then we realize that the value of trials in our life is not just health and knowledge and the things of earth, but it actually goes even further in building in us some sort of spiritual resource that God himself creates and uses in us. When you realize that, then you can kind of look at the trials and go, wow, God's doing something in my life. I'm going through this hard thing right now, but hey, God's doing something in my life. God's working in my life. He's using this trial in some way. Then yeah, I guess you can start to see why it might be something to get a little bit happy about. You know, a lot of people think that depression is connected to trials. They think that the reason people get depressed and hopeless and all the things that happen when people they get dragged down, they often want to say it's because they're going through so much. You know, someone has lost a loved one, and then they had a hard time at work, and then they got sick, and we go, oh, look at all the trials they're going through. And so no wonder they're depressed, because of all the trials. But it's actually not trials that cause depression. That's not what causes it. Trials can be a part of the puzzle, but so can the lack of trials. There are people that get depressed who have it all, who aren't facing any hardship or any difficulty whatsoever, and yet they still get depressed. They still find themselves sad. See, sadness and the lack of joy, the opposite of joy, doesn't come from the presence or absence of trials. That sadness comes from a lack of meaning and a lack of hope, that there is no future worth living for. People get to a point of depression because they look at the situation, they go, this situation I'm in is intolerable, and yet I can't see any way out of it. And so they become sad. And that could be an intolerable situation because of a trial, but it can also be an intolerable situation because of the lack of anything moving them in their life. And that's what depression is. But when we understand that through God, he's always working in us to bring out of us something better than we were before. And in our future, he has planned for us to be with him forever. There is never a lack of hope. We always can say and look ahead and go, the trial is temporary, and there is coming a day, and God is working in me to make me into something better. For whatever purpose is his, it will have meaning. Even if I don't see it, I can have confidence that there is meaning in it. And that's something to be happy about. That's something to be really valued and to love, and to say, this is good. I can be happy. I can be joyful, even in the trial. It's not easy to get there when we've been so used to living the way the world wants us to think, but when we understand how God works in our lives in these ways, we can start to say, hey, you know what, I can find joy even in the midst of chaos and hardship and difficulty, because there is meaning in my life from God, and he is building in me something so that I will be complete and perfect, and that I will lack nothing. You know, that's something to think about.